important. When the county government of Bomet invites you for public participation, in other words, they are telling you, we want your feedback because the decision and commitment we want to make as a county will affect all of us. That is why when the government publishes in the media and also on the website that there is a policy coming up and you have scheduled public participation, is important for all of us to participate. If you miss out here, you will end up saying that this policy is not good without knowing that you had the opportunity to give your contributions in the policy. Therefore, let me take this opportunity also to invite all of us to be attending and participate and give feedback in public participation for us. If you can't attend, make sure you download draft policy documents that are being subjected for public participation and submit either online or whichever means is provided your comments regarding that policy. Once we conduct the public participation, we receive feedback, but we have looked at something else very important. As we conduct public participation and present public policies for comments to the public, you have noted public or members of public usually attend public participation without first reading the draft policy that has been shared by the ministry or the relevant authority developing the policy in the website. It is important before you go for public participation, download the policy, read it, and have the notes. That is why you will attend a public participation, give your comments, but when the policy is out, you don't see something closer to the comments you gave. Because probably the issues that you are trying to raise were already addressed by the policy, but you have not read the policy itself. Therefore, it is important to participate in public participation and also to read the policy drafts and give your comments. Legitimization. Now, once you package the policy as the policy drafters with your comments, and the matrix is there on how we address their comments, we usually submit this policy now to the cabinet secretary in charge of that ministry. The ministry spearheading the policy now takes over that draft and will prepare what we call cabinet memorandum, so that the minister in charge, the CS in charge of that ministry, will present this policy to the cabinet. And there are two ways of legitimization here. We want to legitimize and give the authority to the policy through cabinet. But again, if we anticipate that this policy will require a law to be put in place, remember, we usually have, and this is very important for us as scholars and everybody to understand how the policy and regulatory framework follows each other. We always start with a policy. If you want to address an issue, you must start with a policy, not the law. I know we have so many laws without policies. That is very wrong. Because the policy articulates the issues, which are then picked and enforced through the law. And after having the law, we go ahead and have regulations. So as you get into this space of public policy, and you want to really demonstrate that you understand, as you communicate public policy, they have to follow each other in that order. Policy, laws, regulations. No mix-up of the same. Because policy starts, the law gives effect to the issues, and regulation comes at the tail end. Therefore, if we anticipate that this law, this policy will require a law to be put in place, we develop what we call a sessional paper that goes to Parliament. And because it is a public policy, it means it goes to Parliament. The relevant committee of Parliament will come up with a public bill that will emanate from this public policy. So for those who have been asking what is a session paper, that is the route that we shall take in the case we anticipate. Like now, the other day we have revised the Kenya foreign policy of 2014 so that we can capture the commercial diplomacy and economic diplomacy focus. Again, to support our MSMEs to access market out there and to make our international embassies to be commercial hubs. Now that revised foreign policy, we anticipated that we need a bill, we need a law. Therefore, already the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, has forwarded a session of paper to the Parliament. For the other policy now, the Executive has already accepted it. And that is how we do in terms of public policy. Assuming we go to the Cabinet adopts, we don't need a law, that becomes the end of that bill, and now we start implementing policy. Now we start implementing that policy. Assuming we want a bill, a law to come out of it, session of paper goes to Parliament as the policy is being adopted and approved by the Cabinet. And the implementation stage is also very, very key. This is why I mentioned we should have an implementation matrix that gives responsibility to all of us, stakeholders. What Kipra will do, what Bomet University will do. It is a policy that you have a very key role to play. What the civil societies will do, what will be the role of development partners in implementing this policy. Therefore, the implementation matrix becomes very, very important. And every time you come across a public policy document, you need to go and check the implementation matrix towards the tail end of the policy and understand who are the implementers of this policy. Very, very important. Finally, a policy must have a life, which later we shall review. We shall recommend at least 5 years before you review a policy. And review does not mean that you have to change the policy. No. You can do a review and you find that the issues that you are addressing, they are still relevant. There are no emerging issues, and you continue implement the same policy. Or there are emerging issues that have come during the implementation, and you want to capture them. For you to capture the emerging issues that are in that space of public policy that you are addressing, you have to review the policy. For you to address the issues of changing geopolitical and affiliations and the space that we are in, for example, the AGOA labs the other day, it was not renewed. Okay? The US administration has already issued a statement. There will be a tariff for all the countries exporting there, and Kenya is one of them. So how do you address now those emerging issues? There's no duty-free, quota-free privilege treatment for our export to US. And remember, our major export there is apparel, flowers. Now there is a tariff. How do you address that? So you review a policy at least 5 years, not less than that. Like the foreign policy has gone for 10 years. From 2014, we reviewed it last year. We have the national trade policy from 2017. Now we are constituting a committee in the State Department for Trade to review the national trade policy. So it is important to review.
So what is Kipra doing towards that? Thank you very much.
I don't know what Dr. Kanja, you will respond to that or you pick another.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Now, from the public policy cycle, it's my observation that Kenya has many problems, which is the first step. And the major problem in that cycle again is implementation of what you've come up with. Because we have so many problems, we don't lack policies. We have so many policies. We skip from the problem to the implementation, which becomes another problem. So my question is, for example, during public participation, at what point do the participants know that their input has been taken care of to avoid ritualism, such that we only say public participation was done, but the content of the public participation was not captured. Then secondly, Kipra is a repository, as you said. Do you have mechanisms, for instance, for looking at these people who go for benchmarking outside the country, that before they go outside the country to benchmark, that first of all, they should have consumed what you have in Kipra, because a case in point is a colleague how to make good tea. The tea they are being given as an example comes from Kenya, and the same document being presented is an MDG document, which was developed in Kenya. So we are spending public money to do what we've done in Kenya outside the country. Do you have a mechanism for monitoring those kinds of consumption? Then again, in line with what my colleagues said, at what point do you link public policy making process and the populist political statements during the process of making these statements? And lastly, I'll take a case. There is this National Care Reform Strategy 2022-2032, which is, I believe, is already active, which aims to institutionalize children and move them from the institutions to family-based care. How is the implementation process now that we have so many of these children moving out of the same families? You want to take them back before you even institutionalize them. So doesn't that bring in an implementation quagmire in a way, because it's like you are going in circles. You want to bring them back to the family, and in the same family they ran away from. Don't you think you need to look at the challenges they faced in that setup before you bring them back? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Any other?
We can pick one more, and we can do another round.
Thank you, Dr. for the insightful presentation. My question is, in the objectives of this workshop, we saw the triple helix model, academia, we saw the industry, we saw the government. Now, to what extent does that model influence policy development at KIP? How does the triple helix model that we saw in the opening presentation influence public policy development, academia, industry, and the government?
Okay, Doc, you can respond to that, and then we pick another round of questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, colleagues. I would respond to these comments. I also have my colleagues from Kipra. I think they're also taking notes, Victor and the other colleagues, so that you can, Dr. Kivo, you're there, you can pick the issues so that we can all respond. Now, difference between policy and policy political pronouncements, how those two comes in. This is what happens. The president, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, will issue a political statement. It is for us now, the advisors and the ministry responsible on that statement His Excellency has just issued, to sit down and ask ourselves, do we have a policy in place that can implement His Excellency political statement? Remember, if His Excellency comes to Bomet and says that we are going to do 1, 2, 3, as the advisors and the team from the ministry on which that issue has been mentioned, we have to pick it up and ask ourselves, is there a policy to do that? If not, because that issue requires resources, you have to run very fast and either have it taken to cabinet that becomes a cabinet directive for us to be able to have resources to implement that political statement, or we align our policies or the instruments that are available. Because again, remember, you cannot appropriate public funds without a policy guideline or a cabinet directive. Therefore, in most cases, what will happen, the ministry will take up that issue. The waziri in charge of that ministry will do a cabinet memorandum and take it to cabinet, because it was a pronouncement of the president, and it will be adopted. In a cabinet memorandum, we usually have financial implications of that cabinet memorandum or that issue if it is adopted. And we usually have in that cabinet memorandum signatories to it. Number one, the CS National Treasury, the AG, another 9 ministries that may be required to implement that position that you want to implement as a result of